Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans,
And I'm Robert Winters.
and we're just going to finish up with our
We'll do a little
tour
bit,
of the
just a little bit
Middlesex
more of the
Canal.
out part of Inside
Yeah.
Out, and then maybe come
The
back
out
to Cambridge
part
for a
is-
little bit here.
Yeah. Well,
So-
Middlesex County, Middlesex
Middlesex
Cambridge,
County.
yeah.
Well, you know, Cambridge actually used to extend all the way up.
Yeah.
You know, and then it gradually pieces of it got carved out. Like, for example, Newton. Isn't it?
Oh,
From the
Newtown,
original
that's
Newtown, which
right.
was Cambridge's
I bet
name
people
before it
don't
switched.
know that. Yeah.
Right. Well, there's a lot of there's so much history.
Because people come and go here, some of them.
Yeah,
Just, you know.
yeah, and I don't think anybody really does nearly as good a job of sort of getting
No.
some of this good.
I just stopped and
good
looked
stuff
at
out.
some public art right in on Western Ave and River. What's it called? The blocking.
the
The port.
Cron-
It's like a
Oh,
brass
the Cronin
thing.
Park there. There's they put
a
the
street-
table structure in there.
I don't know. It's like a, what do you call it? A bas relief or something of Central Square back in the 30s or something. Streets of something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's right in the. It's this high big statue in the middle of this, between River and Western. I never stopped to look at it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean Cambridge Historical Commission and others, but
Well,
Cambridge
this is an
Historical
art
Commission
Yeah.
really do a good job of trying to get some of the word
Yeah.
out there. But you know, we need to do more. I mean,
Vision
this
of
is
the Port or something.
you know,
It was
there are-
just done in 2015, so you should know.
yeah. No, I think I know the
Yeah.
one you're talking about.
Yeah.
By the way, it's funny how you learn about these things. So. I actually I didn't even know about this Middlesex Canal, which was what we were talking about for the last half hour. I didn't know about it until I just happened to get this book. This was a book. It's been long since it was
Boston
published.
Basin Bicycle
It was
Book.
called the Boston
Oh my
Basin
goodness.
Bicycle Book, and what it did, it was topographical maps with bicycle routes
No bike
carved
lanes.
in it. Not in those days.
No.
And there was one of the listed bike rides to go exploring
Oh.
by bike.
That's right, 'cause
called-
you've done a bike. I think I did the bike one. I don't
Yeah,
know if
yeah.
I did one.
But this was one that was called
Yeah.
Up the Canal.
Up,
And I
up
went,
the
canal? What canal?
Oh, that's how you
Right?
found out about it?
That's how I found out about it. So then I biked sections of it, but then it was also, this is like in the 1980s when I was first learning to drive. So when I was first going out on adventures, learning
Yeah.
how to drive in my little VW
You
Bug.
had it back then?
Yeah,
Wow.
I got a Bug back in, it was,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, it wasn't the bus.
No, it wasn't a bus. So I first drove in 1982. So from, through the 80s, I used to go on little excursions
Aw.
exploring things like this. So I would find little sections of Middlesex Canal, just sort of on my own, walking in the woods, discovering little pieces. It was great
at you.
adventure. Nowadays, we actually have it all mapped out, and
Yeah.
people can actually just, they can take these maps. I won't go to it here, but the thing is that we have published on our MiddlesexCanal.org
right.
website,
Yeah.
and I use these when we do our
'Cause
walks
it is a whole
here.
separate organization, right? The Middlesex-
Yes, yeah. So the thing is, there's an entire map book
Okay.
that actually shows section
Oh,
maps.
nice. And it's
you can go
online?
and it's completely available online.
Nice.
Yeah. The other thing too, there was this wonderful fellow named Bert Verplank put together sort of an earlier version of this. Was a whole book of maps, section maps.
So these aren't available anymore?
We have a museum actually up in North Billerica,
Oh.
right at the Concord River.
Oh.
And we actually have a warehouse building that we're converting into the new museum that we now own.
So they must be pretty well, they
Yeah.
get funding.
And actually, it's kind of nice. Where we got this warehouse building is actually where the first shovel full of earth was dug
Oh my
at
goodness.
the beginning of the Middlesex Canal at North Billerica at the high water mark.
Amazing.
So it's kind of great. If we can actually pull that off, we'll be wonderful.
I like the way you say we. You're very,
Well, actually, I
part
have
of
to
it.
say,
Yeah.
it's more them than me, because at this point, because I live in Cambridge, I'm a little more detached from
yeah,
it all.
but you're a supporter.
I'm a supporter, but most of the heavy lifting is left to some of the
People that
mainstays.
live mainly around.
Yeah, and some of the people who are the real movers and shakers are actually getting up in years. So we actually
Yeah.
could use some younger people to help out to do it. Then it was Mary Stetson Clark put out what was in many ways the sort of the seminal volume on the Old Middlesex Canal,
Huh.
right?
Amazing.
I actually have, I won't pull it out here, but I actually have here an original passport for the Middlesex Canal from 1805.
You had to
For-
have a passport?
It was, well, if you were actually going to be moving goods on
I
the
see.
canal,
You had to have some kind of
you had
permit.
to, you had to basically go and pay pay a fee in order
Right,
to do
makes
that.
sense.
You know,
Yeah.
so through the joy of eBay,
Oh boy, you love eBay because you get all your
I got
documents. Yeah.
I get an
Look at
original copy of a
Wow.
passport when they were moving
Amazing.
cordwood and plank lumber along the
Goodness.
Middlesex Canal in 1805.
Wonder what it
Right,
costs.
signed by the
Yeah.
agent for the Middlesex Canal
Uh-huh.
Corporation at the time.
So is it designated an historic site by
Every
the,
bit of it is designated as a historic
federal or
landmark.
state? Do we have state designations too? We do, don't
You know,
we?
I should know that much more clearly than I
DCR
do,
or I don't
but it
know
is
if
a
it's-
national historic
Oh, it is an
site.
act. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it
Well,
is.
that's what I meant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And the thing is, we can't necessarily just prevent things from happening, but we certainly
No.
document things, and we tend to be pretty successful when some development is going to go on nearby, to get them to basically set aside and preserve remnants of the canal.
Well, aren't they? If it's historic, don't they have to get special permits to even build near
Yeah,
there?
yeah. So the thing is that until we actually got it everything on the registry,
I
which is
see. You had
really
to
why we
really
have
be
our
a
mapping
watchdog.
project.
Yeah.
Then there were actually some sections from when the Middlesex Canal Association was formed in early 1960s. Since then, there were some sites that were actually lost, some
I bet.
significant
Sure.
things. But that tends not to happen nearly so much anymore.
Because it's such a known thing.
Yeah, yeah. There was even a really fabulous restoration of a section of the Middlesex Canal right around where Route 129 is in Wilmington, where they actually rebanked it all, and there were aerial photos that looked like a brand new canal. Problem is they did not couple it with an active use, and it fell into disrepair again. And now you would never know that all that work had actually been done.
Wow.
Lesson
Yeah.
learned: if you want to
Yeah.
preserve something,
Yeah.
make it into an active use. If you don't make it into an active use, it's going to just disappear in
Interesting.
time.
Yeah.
So I've certainly learned that important lesson
Yeah.
that way.
Huh.
By the way, one of the sources I used for finding out some things about the Middlesex Canal, just a little piece of the much more local portion of this, was actually some things from the Cambridge Historical Commission.
Another great jewel of Cambridge.
Yeah, so starting in 1967, they published the first volume of what became a 5-volume set called The Survey of Architectural History in Cambridge. Volume 1 was East Cambridge. I mean, I'm sure some of the folks in West Cambridge probably think of themselves as the most historic or whatever, but honestly, most of the real
sense, 'cause you
action is
start
in East
from the-
Cambridge.
Yeah, makes
Yeah,
sense.
there's a lot of industrial history,
Yeah.
residential history, and it was a really great piece of work.
So was that revised?
Yeah, so they went from there. Then I think volume 2 was Mid Cambridge area. Cambridgeport, and then it was Mid
Oh, that's
Cambridge,
the one that
and
got
then
this.
Old Cambridge,
gave
and
me a
then
copy of that.
volume 5 was Northwest Cambridge. And then I think it was in 1989 they came back and they republished the East Cambridge volume. And I think they had some intention of doing, and it's really almost like a whole new book because
Yeah.
it expanded so much and added so much to
So
the
it's
original.
mid-Cambridge. What about what happened? So Cambridgeport. What about Riverside?
Riverside, I think, is
in
contained
Cambridgeport or
within. I mean,
Harvard
the thing is, a lot of this terminology, like
Yeah.
what's Mid Cambridge? Mid Cambridge is a fake name. It was
Right.
created by Mark Fortune, I think, around 1950,
Oh.
as part of some federal grant programming. So the thing is, and in fact, Cambridgeport included all of Central Square historically.
Well, it still
know.
does, doesn't it? Well, now they
Yeah.
call it the port, but I look at it like by zip
Yeah.
codes too. It's the same zip code.
But if you look at the old maps, I mean,
Yeah.
Central Square was really at the center of old Cambridgeport. It's actually
Uh-huh.
the old postal codes are probably the best indicator of what was, So Harvard Square was one center, Cambridgeport and Central Square was the other center.
Yeah.
East Cambridge and Leechmere area was where the courthouses were built.
Right, it's 0204.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, and the courthouses were
One.
there for a very, very long time as
Yeah.
well, going way back into the 19th century.
North Cambridge is.
And then that came
yeah.
much later. I mean, North Cambridge was sort of the last addition, in a sense, because it was largely just
Yeah.
brickyards and whatnot.
And
It
then we
wasn't
have the
as nearly as
precious
residential.
desired zip code of 0298.
You sort of passed through North Cambridge once upon a time. But anyway, I encourage anybody who cares about history or wants to learn a few more things you can go to the Cambridge Public Library.
Yeah, but so they have copies of all these, right?
At the
As
library,
well as
they
going
do,
to historical
yeah.
commission when they're open, I guess.
Yeah, but the thing is that these are, except for and the latest edition is, I think it was kind of begun as an addition to this, is what turned into Charlie Sullivan and Susan Maycock's.
That big book.
Yeah. Building Old Cambridge. So that's a great volume, a gigantic 50-pound book.
Yeah.
Right? I think it was a 50-pound. Well, no, that's crazy.
50 pounds, $50.
But it's a lot. It's a big book. Yeah. But the thing is that again, it captures a lot of the good work from the Cambridge Historical Commission. I think maybe the last thing I'll just say on this here is that one of the things we do is we actually publish a newsletter called Towpath Topics. And all of these copies, going back to the original one, I scanned them, did optical character recognition of the old ones. We have a complete set of all of the contents of all of them going back.
So if you become like a member of the
1960s.
you get those things?
You can become a member, which is relatively cheap, and a proprietor, which is a little bit more. It's like, $15, $20 something dollars, something like that tops. And it helps us. It really does. I mean, I'm not doing this as a pitch, but
but that's nice to know.
What we could use as much as anything else is also just the bodies. We could use people who are taking an interest in the history. It's a bit of a harder sell for Cambridge people, but the truth is
they need to work on people that lived closer to that, maybe through the high schools or through the, isn't there a college there, Middlesex or something?
Yeah, I mean,
there's ways they could reach people to become more...
It's much easier to reach people in Woburn and Billerica because the canal is it's a part of people's lives up there.
Exactly.
Most people know the canal, and if you live in those particular towns, less so when you get down to Somerville. By the way, as part of a walk we did on Sunday, we actually visited the southernmost visible remnant of the Middlesex Canal, which is at Sagamore Street, where it meets the Mystic Lakes. So it's almost into Arlington. Right? Actually, it was once part of Arlington until they Winchester broke off.
So do you want to just show this and then?
Yeah, so we would do that and move on to some other little bits and pieces here. So one of the things we had installed up in Billerica last year was this is a roadside marker just north of our museum in Billerica. And one of the things that's particular about it, it actually shows some facts about the canal itself, but it also has a little piece here about Henry David Thoreau. Henry David Thoreau wrote a tract called "The Week on the let's see, what was it? On the Concord and Merrimack Rivers," right? And tells the story, and gives an account of boating, from the Concord River going up to the Merrimack River, going along the Middlesex Canal. One of the pieces that I like to give on one of the walks when we go up there is to sort of show you where the locks were. You can still see the remnants of it, where he would have actually entered the Concord River from there.
And here's the website. So it's middlesexcanal.org.
Middlesexcanal.org.
All one word. Yeah.
So anyway, it's
nice
history all around us.
Yeah.
It's a great thing. Actually, one of the things I was mentioned earlier, I'd love to talk about another week, perhaps, is some of the other amazing things for those who've never been to Dogtown up in Rockford area.
Maybe we'll do that during vacation week.
Yeah.
Whatever. Maybe we'll go there before vacation.
And also, I'm planning to lead a walk along the aqueducts that used to carry the Boston water supply through the city of Newton.
But that's not scheduled yet.
Not scheduled, but I'll schedule it pretty soon.
So you put these on your website.
I do that as well, but we also have it up on the AMC Local Walks.
Boston Local Walks.
Yeah.
AMC, you could Google that, right?
Yeah. So anyway, back to Cambridge.
Oh yeah.
Let's maybe spend a little bit of time on some of what's going on.
Sorry to be yawning. It just happened to come out when you said that.
That's quite all right. So one of the things that, just getting back to City Hall, one of the things that came up, that it's an annual tradition, is when the city issues passes the order for the water and sewer rates for the year.
Right, there was discussion on that.
And once again, the water rate has pretty much been flat for a few years, but the sewer rate continues to jump pretty significantly.
Here it is. Yeah.
So it's like 7% or so increase in the sewer rates, but leading
sewer
to
rate yielding overall 5.2. Okay.
5.2 increase in what you pay. I mean, just give you a quick flash of that.
There you go.
Relatively boring stuff, but this is part of life in the big city, right? So anyway, that's something, in addition to the AAA bond rating letter that we get every year in around January, February, Then there's the water rates. I think at the end of April, late April, is when the city manager will come in with the budget submission. And then we'll go through the process of budget hearings in early May, culminating, I think, a May 20th expected passage of that. One thing, I don't know, because I was sort of tuning out on some of this. There was another item on the agenda having to do with Brattle Street.
Was it manager's agenda, or was that
It was actually from the manager's agenda.
from the charter righted stuff, or was it?
I think it might have been. But anyway, all it was a report back because there were some
Oh, here it is.
concerns
Agenda
expressed about signage for
Bicycle
bicyclists
signage, yeah.
along Brattle Street. And I just like to continually point out that the thing is that the one-way Brattle Street section with a two-way
Does not
separated bike thing
Crazy.
is so filled with conflicts, and
Yeah.
basically the manager's response saying like, "Oh, we're going to add more signs, we're going to do this, we're going to do
just
that."
get rid of it.
The thing is that you know
Yeah.
there's just so much you can do with signs when something
Yeah.
is sort of structurally flawed to begin with, And I actually did get a concession from a person who was in the Transportation and Planning Division. They said, "Did you ever consider just making Brattle Street, that section of Brattle Street, into a two-way street with very, very, very low speed limit? Like a truly
10 miles.
like a neighborhood street, right?" Because right now, if you, even as a car driver, you get routed all over Creation as you pass through there. So if you were trying to get to Central Square, for example, it's kind of a ridiculous long way to do it.
Well,
And so they made it so that a bicyclist could go straight through, a counter to the one-way traffic. But I still think it would actually be helpful and better for all if, in fact, you just
I don't
had
know.
a full
I don't like
speed limit.
two-way streets on small. That's not that wide a street. So, and there's also parking. You realize
Well-
it's metered parking. You'd have to take away if you're gonna.
But the way it was configured, it always had two lanes,
Yeah, but it
and
didn't
it
have
had
the bike
parking,
lane.
and it had parking on both sides.
Yeah, but it didn't have the bike
Right,
lanes.
but if you had a slow street, honestly, the need for the separated lane becomes pretty minimal if you
and who's
reduce
going to
it.
pay attention to that reduced speed, Robert? If they don't even pay attention to other signs.
It's actually, I think, for a street like that, it's actually relatively easy to
And then why? And then
implement
if you
it.
do it there, then why not do it at some other streets?
Actually,
or,
there
you
are
know?
some streets that they could and should do that. That's exactly what
15?
it's exactly what they're doing
What's
in
slow?
Somerville now.
Well,
If you go in Somerville,
you bringing up Somerville? I'm
I
surprised.
absolutely am. Webster has been changed from a one-way street to a two-way
Right,
street.
but that was going over a bridge, and it's different. You don't have any parking on that at all.
That's true. That's true.
So I'm just
So
saying.
they did have to eliminate some parking to do that. But the thing is that
No,
it's,
there was no parking over there. on those
I
streets.
think on
No,
the
there was
one
an
side.
overpass. It just you didn't.
No,
you didn't
not
park on
at the
bridge.
overpass. All I'm pointing out is
All
that
right.
is
It
that
could
there
be
are
done,
some
but I just think if they just got rid of anyway.
right. But I just continue to be sort of fascinated with how the Seoul City responses never even allow for the
Well,
possibility.
so
of
far
some
that's the
ways of
only
thinking.
place where you have two-way bicycle lane, right?
There are counterflow lanes on a piece of Norfolk Street.
What do you mean counterflow?
Meaning where the automobile traffic goes one way, but they permit bicycle traffic to go opposite.
Okay, but
think-
not two ways and one bike lane.
Yeah, also in the Shady Hill area of Cambridge, there's another counterflow lane there, where if you're coming back from Somerville, you can actually come in on a bike one way, but you can't do that driving. that
Okay,
way.
I mean, okay.
So, anyway, I just would hope that
Yeah.
I actually kind of hope that during the Envision Cambridge process,
Mm-hmm.
that they would, when they talked about mobility, they would actually talk about, some of these things. Not a word. Not a
Mm. Wait,
word.
is that kind of over? I'm not clear on where that.
you
Is
know,
it going to be one big report?
I-
I know they did a presentation. but
I'm trying
sort
to
of
be
dying
kind
on
and
the vine,
generous
or what?
here, but honestly, that whole Envision Cambridge process has
There's a
been
lot of money
nothing.
thrown and.
It's nothing but
Yeah.
a disappointment,
Wow.
And I'm speaking as the
Yeah.
one person who had a perfect attendance record with
Yeah,
the
you were on
advisory
too, 'cause you were on the
committee
advisory,
and the
plus you were on
housing
the
working
housing,
group.
yeah.
And honestly, I nothing but disappointment.
Yeah. A lot of
So
money.
a lot of
A lot
money
of
went
nice
into it
signs,
as
a lot
well.
of nice graphics, but
Right.
boy.
again, not to wade too deep into the waters of the controversy, but I think they've now done 2 meetings of this.
Well, the second one was just public comment.
This is this
Right.
what they call the affordable housing overlay proposal.
And there's 3 meetings scheduled by the housing committee. There's one, I think,
There's
is it next week?
There's another one that's actually this week.
No, already happened.
No, there's another one this week.
Is it Thursday? I think you're right.
Yeah, maybe it's Thursday.
Oh, that's too bad.
It's either Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not going. I'm not going to any of them anymore.
Well, I think they're televised. So
but they also have
watch
another
it
one
there.
scheduled in April, and there's a round table they were trying to schedule,
Well,
but
that I
it
saw.
was made subject to the charter rights, so they haven't
Oops,
scheduled
I
that.
got rid of all of us.
Um,
all right.
Allegedly, there is some additional modifications for what the proposal is, but it's sort of become, from at least my own personal views, it's become sort of the ugliest part
Yeah,
of civic
no,
interaction
it's
I've
true.
seen in 30 years.
No, it's
Where
true.
anybody who expresses
Yeah.
an opinion other than what is the sort of the permitted opinion, you basically get your head taken off.
Yeah,
you
and
know.
it's happened. Yeah.
And it
You
has
look at some of the
happened.
listservs
Yeah.
and,
So
oh,
there are people who simply expressed,
yeah.
a point of view, and then they went outside the meeting and then were accosted by multiple people telling you what a horrible human being you are and whatever. So I have to say, because I've been following city council meetings and going up there since the 1980s, and I'm pretty darn close to just quitting. I'll tune in, maybe I'll watch it on TV, but honestly, I despise the place now. It is a hostile environment.
Are we talking
and-
what, City Hall?
Sullivan Chamber, yeah. I'm not happy about it at all, and and honestly, I remember I was through the rent control years when there were people who took really strong sides on either side, and
Thursday.
there's been more bad behavior lately than I remember even in those days.
Well, it is televised, so I will catch it later. I'm not going because they're having women's trivia night at Central Square.
That sounds like a
Library
lot
that
more
night.
fun.
A lot more fun, and you don't have to be part of a team. Women's History Trivia Night, sponsored by the Women's Commission. It is still Women's History Month or whatever.
Yeah.
Thursday, March 28th at 6 o'clock, Central Square branch. So right around the neighborhood.
This is cool.
Pizza will be provided. So
We like that.
I think I'm going to go to that.
That sounds like a great idea.
And I'll
I mean,
watch the housing.
I'm actually finding we just saw Middlesex Canal. Part of the reason for that is that my interest in history and my interest in mathematics and other things are being really revived here as an alternative.
Well, math is
to
your
the-
livelihood. I mean, you can't not have an interest.
That's
in
absolutely right,
mathematics.
right. But the thing is, I just find I get a lot more joy out of interacting with students than I do with elected officials at this stage.
Well, wouldn't that always be the case?
Not always.
Yeah.
The thing is I
Well, you're also dealing with them during an election year. This is always going to get more difficult.
Oh
too,
my gosh, yeah. By the way, no new candidates since last week that I'm aware
Yeah, I
of.
looked at that. Okay.
It's the same few that have popped through. So they're raising money now, at least.
Yeah.
So we'll see that. And I anticipate that. Let me very briefly say
right.
something about proportional representation. I think most people in the city know I'm probably the biggest proponent of proportional representation that you'll find, right? But the one problem with proportional representation is the question nobody ever asks, which is proportional to what? During the days when it was town versus like townies versus the Harvardy people, then you would elect, certain group of people would elect their representatives, and the other group would elect their representative. During the rent control years, it tended to be the pro-rent control people dominated versus the anti-rent control people. In other periods of time, it was largely proportional based on neighborhoods because people would vote for councilors based on whether they lived nearby, and they felt that was their form of representation. I don't know what the elected officials are now representative of anymore. I mean, I think you can see a councilor like Tim Toomey, arguably is very much representative from East Cambridge. Maybe Jan Devereaux strongly
and then the people
for
that still
West
live
Cambridge.
there that might identify with him because that's
Absolutely.
changing. Yeah.
But once you get past that, honestly, I don't know what it represents. I don't know where the proportionality is. And then when organizations like Residents Alliance and A Better Cambridge emerge, and I actually heard a guy who I actually kind of like, referred to them as the two sides, whether they were. I said, so we've gotten to the point where we're deciding the two sides of Cambridge are a Better Cambridge and Cambridge Residents Alliance. That is absurd.
I think more people are aware of a Better Cambridge now than a Cambridge Residents Alliance, because I think they've got a lot more younger members.
They are
really the millennials.
the millennials saying, "Give me, give me, give me."
Professionals.
Yeah.
Well, I'm that's your. I mean, I'm just
I
looking
know,
at facts.
I know.
I think they're much larger. They've got the bicycle people in there. They've got. Where Cambridge Resident Alliance, I tend to associate with more, people who've been here a while and older, and I could be wrong.
It's true. I think they
And
are
some of them,
by and large
there are some
older.
overlaps there.
Yeah. But I just think we could do better. Honestly, I wish people would kind of rise up in the various neighborhoods they're in and start thinking about who do they want for representation.
Well, there's Upgrade Cambridge, which is all about municipal broadband.
But still, it's one issue, though, right?
Right, but it could. I'm just saying, you could then latch on to who's going to support this or whatever.
I mean, so
then
if you live in North
Cambridge,
if you,
and then all the environmental
if you live
stuff.
in North Cambridge, do you feel like you're represented on the city council?
Craig Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does. He represents to some degree.
Craig just says things.
If you're in Cambridge Port, are you represented? If you're in Wellington Harrington, do you feel represented by the people who are elected to the city council now? And I'm not suggesting it should all be.
Cambridge Port.
Oh, is that true?
She's living on
that's
Brookline Street, I think, or Sydney, one of
Oh,
those.
really?
So
I didn't even know that.
You could say that she's Cambridge Port.
Yeah.
I think she's citywide.
Right.
Looking at
And we've always had those, but honestly,
right.
I mean, I never thought I'd see the day when I started questioning the notion that we should have 9 at-large councilors. Now I'm thinking to myself, maybe having some district councilors isn't such a horrible idea.
Maybe having an elected mayor.
And I've never thought about that.
What about an elected mayor?
I'm not quite there yet, but
Okay.
honestly,
It's getting there, huh?
It's getting there.
Yeah.
It's not an idea that I'm going to completely dismiss out of hand anymore.
All right. But
so
district representative, interesting.
I'm not saying I'm supporting of that.
Yeah.
I think we should give PR another good shot and make it work, and then I'll be real happy with it again. But we're just not there right now, so we got some work to do, folks. So.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll skedaddle
And we'll see you next
soon
week.
on Cambridge Inside Out.
All right. Bye.